Learning curves. Learning curves describes simple fact that the more experience in doing a specific task, the more efficient they become in doing this specific task. The efficiency could be in the form of higher quality or lower cost involved. However, for comparative purpose, we will assume that the learning curves affect only the time needed to produce a specific number of units. The concept of learning curve relies on a principle that the more unit produced, the more learning curve or the more expertise achieved. Hence, with more production, the cost or at least the labor time spent on a specific task is reduced. There are two learning curve models: cumulative average time learning model and incremental unit time learning model. Cumulative average versus incremental unit model. Cumulative average time learning model assesses the average time per unit required to produce specific number of units, while incremental unit time learning model assess the time needed to produce the last unit produced. The concept of cumulative average time learning model relies on a constant percentage of decline in average time per unit for every doubling. To explain that, let's assume that producing of specific mobiles, let's assume here it's only one single mobile, is subjected to 70% learning curve. And if the time required to produce the first mobile is 10 hours, then the time required to produce two mobiles, which is one doubling, is 70% multiplied by 10 hours multiplied by 2, which will result in 14 hours as a total time to produce 2 units. This will give an average of 7 hours per mobile. The minimum rate of cumulative learning is 1 or 100%, and the maximum rate is 0.5 or 50%. The minimum of 100% means there is no learning effect, or the time required to produce another unit is the same as the first unit. The maximum of 50% means that the next unit will take 0 time, and the total time to produce the 2 units is the same as the first unit alone. The incremental unit time learning model relies on a concept that the time needed to produce the last unit is declined by a constant percentage. For the same example mentioned earlier, where learning curve is 70% and the time needed for the first unit is 10 hours, the time needed to produce the second mobile is 70% multiplied by 10 hours, which will result in 7 hours. So the first mobile will take 10 hours and the second will take 7 hours, making the total time for the 2 mobiles is 17 hours. This will make an average of 8.5 hours of time per mobile. Under the same assumptions of both models, the incremental unit time model will predict higher average time per unit compared to cumulative average time model. Let's take this detailed example to understand the calculation process. Let's assume that Clear Vision Training Department is planning the production cost for new training folders produced for their clients. Let's assume that 80% learning curve applied. The first lot of 200 training folders is expected to require 1,000 hours of labor time. The following information is also given. Direct labor cost is 30 riyal per hour. Direct material cost is 50 riyal per direct labor hour. Variable overhead applied of 40 real per direct labor hour. And fixed overhead applied is 5,000 real per lot. The question here, what's the cumulative average time per unit after 16 lots have been manufactured if the cumulative average model is used? The basic concept here is that each time the quantity is doubled, 80% learning curve applied as a cumulative average. It's important to note that here the units is the lot of 200 training folders. So, if the first lot required 1,000 labor hours, then the production of the second lot, which is the first doubling, will require 1,000 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 0.8, which is equal to 1,600 labor hours. If there is no learning curve, then the time required for the second lot, with a total of 400 training folders, will be still 2,000 labor hours. The production for 16 lots require 4 doubling. The first doubling happened after the second lot as mentioned earlier. The second doubling will happen after 4 lots of production. Then the third doubling with a production of 8 lots. And the fourth doubling during the 16 lots production. So the time required for the first lot is 1,000 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 0.8. The value between the two brackets, 2.8 multiplied by 2, should be repeated by the number of doubling, which is 4 times as the number of doubling to produce 16 lots. This will be equal to 6,554 labor hours to produce 16 lots. The 6,554 is the total cumulative cost for all 16 lots produced. Divided by 16 will give us the cost per lot, which is here about 410 Saudi Riyal per lot. Since each lot contains 2 folders, then dividing 410 by 200 will give us about 2 Saudi Riyal per training folder. The same result can be achieved by directly dividing the 6,554 by the total number of training folders, which is 3,200. The next question, what is the total cost of the 16th lot? Let's first calculate the cost of the first lot. The first lot will require 1,000 labor hour as given in the question earlier. The cost of each labor hour is the sum of direct labor, which is 30 Saudi Riyal, plus direct material of 50 Saudi Riyal per direct labor hour, plus variable overhead of 40 Saudi Riyal per direct labor hour, which will be equal to 120 Saudi Riyal per direct labor hour. So, we multiply 120 Saudi Riyal by 1,000 labor hour, and that plus to the fixed overhead of 5,000 Saudi Riyal. The result will be 120,000 plus 5,000, and the net result will be 125,000 Saudi Riyal. So the total cost for the first lot, which contains 200 training folders, is 125,000 Saudi Riyal. For the first doubling, when 2 lots produced, the cumulative average time per lot is 1,000 multiplied by 0.8. So the result is 800 hours. Multiplying cumulative number of lots by cumulative average time per lot, which is 2 multiplied by 800, will result in 1,600 labor hours as cumulative total time. Since we have the total labor hours, which is 1,600, and we calculated earlier the labor hour as 120 Saudi Riyal, so the cumulative cost will equal to 120 multiplied by 1,600. However, we need to add the fixed overhead, which is 5,000 per lot, and as we are producing now 2 lots, so we need to multiply the 5,000 by 2. So the net result will be 202,000 Saudi Riyal. The difference between the new cumulative cost of 202,000 and cumulative cost calculated for the first lot, which is 125,000, represents the addition to cumulative cost, which is in this case 77,000 Saudi Riyal. The second doubling when 4 lots produced. The cumulative average time per lot is 80% from the last doubling, which is 800. So the cumulative average time per lot for the 4 lots is 800 multiplied by 0.8, which will equal to 640. Since the cumulative average time per lot is 640 and the number of lots is 4, multiplying them together will result in cumulative total time, which will be equal to 2,560 labor hours. Multiplying the total labor hours, 2,560, by the cost of labor hour, which is 120 Saudi Riyal, in addition to the fixed overhead, 5,000 multiplied by 4, as we are producing now 4 lots, will result in a total number of 327,200 Saudi Riyal. The addition to cumulative cost is the result of subtraction of cumulative cost of 4 lots minus cumulative cost of 2 lots, which will result in 125,200 Saudi Riyal. The next or third doubling will happen during the 8 lots production. The cumulative average time per lot is 80% from the last cumulative average time per lot calculated earlier as 640. So the new cumulative average time per lot is 640 multiplied by 0.8, which will result in 512 hours per lot. To calculate the cumulative total time, we multiply that by the total number of lots, which is 8, and that result in 4,096 labor hours. We multiply the cost of labor hour of 120 Saudi Riyal by the cumulative total time of 4,096, in addition to the fixed overhead of 5,000 multiplied by 8, as we are producing now 8 lots. This will result in total of 531,520 Saudi Riyal. The addition to cumulative cost is the difference between the new cumulative cost and the previous one, which will result in 204,320 Saudi Riyal. By the 16th lot produced, 4th doubling occur. The cumulative average time per lot is 80% from the last cumulative average time per lot, which is 512, multiplied by 0.8, equal to 410 labor hour per lot. Multiplying that by the total number of lots will result in 6,554 labor hours as cumulative total time. Multiplying that by the cost of labor, which is 120 Saudi Riyal, in addition to the fixed overhead of 5,000 multiplied by 16, as we are producing now 16 lots, the net result will be 866,480 Saudi Riyal. The addition to cumulative cost, the difference between the two cumulative costs, which will result in 334,960 Saudi Riyal. The cumulative cost of 334,960 is for the last doubling of 8 to 16, which means for 8 lots. Dividing this value by 8 will result in 4,870 Saudi riyal as the cost per lot in the last fourth doubling. So the cost for the 16th lot is 41,870 Saudi riyal. For the same example, what is the time required to produce 16th lot using incremental unit time learning model? To calculate the time required to produce the 16th lot, we multiply 1000 hours multiplied by learning curve, and we do that by the number of doubling, which is 4 in this example. So the net result will be 410 labor hour for the 16th lot. What is the total cost for the 16th lot? To calculate the cost of the 16th lot, we multiply the number of labor hours, 410, by the cost per hour, which is 120, and that will result in 49,200 Saudi riyal. In addition to the fixed overhead of 5,000, so the net result will be 54,200 Saudi riyal.